An ancient king from the era of magnificent temples and warring tribes would be utterly bewildered by the world today. He would recognize the land, perhaps some of the stones, but the identities of the people, the very words they used to describe themselves, would be a profound mystery. The terms we use so interchangeably, Jew, Israelite, Israel, are not simple synonyms. They are chapters in an epic saga, each representing a distinct era, a different understanding of peoplehood, and a unique relationship with God and land. Unraveling these terms is to unravel one of the most complex and continuous stories in human history, a 4,000-year journey of a people through triumph, catastrophe, exile, and return. The connection between them is a tapestry woven with threads of ancestry, faith, and politics, and the pattern is far more intricate and fascinating than most people ever realize. Before we delve into the heart of this ancient mystery, if you are passionate about uncovering the profound stories that have shaped our world, take a moment to support our journey. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss a single revelation as we decode the truth behind these powerful identities. Our story begins not with a religion, but with a family, and then a tribe. To understand the foundation, we must first speak of the Israelites. The term Israelite is the most ancient of the three, born from a single, transformative moment. According to the Hebrew Bible, the patriarch Jacob, grandson of Abraham, wrestles with a mysterious being, a man or an angel, and emerges with a new name, Yisrael, which is often translated as "he who strives with God." This name becomes the identity for his descendants, the 12 tribes that spring from his 12 sons. These tribes formed a confederation, a nation bound by kinship and a revolutionary covenant. Their identity the children
was,
of Israel,
first and foremost,
B'nai
a national
Yisrael, and tribal one. They shared a common ancestry, a common land promised to them, and a common allegiance to a single deity, IHCWH. This early period was not one of pure monotheism as we understand it today, but rather monolatry, the worship of one God while acknowledging the existence of others. The core of the Israelite identity was this exclusive pact. The zenith Under of the the leadership ancient of Israelite figures identity like was King the Saul, united monarchy.
King
David, and King Solomon. The 12 disparate tribes were forged into a single, powerful nation. David established Jerusalem as the political and spiritual capital, and his son, Solomon, built the first temple, a magnificent structure that centralized Israelite worship and became the focal point of their national life. The temple was not just a place of sacrifice, it was the symbolic dwelling place of their God on earth, the very heart of the Israelite nation. For this brief golden period, to be an Israelite was to be a citizen of a sovereign kingdom, a subject of the Davidic dynasty, and a participant in a grand national religious project centered in Jerusalem. But this unity was fragile, built upon a precarious balance of tribal loyalties and royal authority. The seeds of division were sown during Solomon's reign. His ambitious building projects required heavy taxes and forced labor, policies that disproportionately burdened the northern tribes. Upon his death, this simmering resentment boiled over. The 10 northern tribes broke away, refusing to accept Solomon's son, Rehoboam, as their king. They re-established their own kingdom, which retained the name Kingdom of Israel. The southern kingdom, comprised mainly of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, became known as the Kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital. This political schism was a critical turning point. Now, there were 2 distinct political entities, both populated by Israelites. While they shared a common heritage and language, their political and, to some extent, their religious paths diverged. The northern kingdom of Israel, while larger and initially more prosperous, was also more politically unstable and religiously syncretic, often blending the worship of YHWH with local Canaanite practices, much to the fury of the biblical prophets. The definitive end for the northern kingdom of Israel came in 722 BCE. The mighty Neo-Assyrian Empire, a brutal military machine, swept down from Mesopotamia and conquered the kingdom. The Assyrians had a standard policy for dealing with rebellious subjects: mass deportation. They exiled the Israelite elite and skilled populations, scattering them across their vast empire, and brought in foreign peoples to settle the land of Samaria. These exiled Israelites of the northern kingdom fade from the historical record, becoming known as the 10 Lost Tribes. With their political and social structures shattered and assimilated into other cultures, their distinct identity as Israelites of the northern kingdom effectively dissolved. From this point forward, the term Israelite begins to recede from a contemporary political reality and transforms into a historical and theological identity, a memory of a lost golden age of unity. The story of the covenant people now fell to the shoulders of the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. With the northern kingdom erased from the map, the weight of carrying the Israelite legacy fell upon the small southern kingdom of Judah. Its inhabitants, primarily from the tribe of Judah, were known as Judahites, or Yehudim in Hebrew. They were, of course, still Israelites by lineage, but their specific identity was now more closely tied to their own kingdom, their own capital in Jerusalem, and their own royal line, the descendants of David. For another century and a half, they maintained a precarious independence, a small buffer state caught between the Egyptian Empire to the south and the rising power of Babylon to the east. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah walked the streets of Jerusalem, warning the kings and the people that their fate, like that of their northern brethren, depended on their faithfulness to their covenant with God. They saw the political turmoil of their day not merely as a clash of empires, but as a divine drama playing out on the world's stage. The defining catastrophe, the event that would forever transform the identity of this people, occurred in 586 BCE. Nebuchadnezzar II, the king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, did what the Assyrians had not. After a brutal siege, his armies breached the walls of Jerusalem, plundered its riches, and utterly destroyed Solomon's temple. The Davidic monarchy was ended, and the scribes, priests, artisans, and elites of Judahite society were forcibly marched into exile in Babylon. This was more than a military defeat. It was a profound theological crisis. Their land was lost, their king was captured, and the house of their God was a smoldering ruin. By all the logic of the ancient world, their history as a people should have ended there. But it did not. Instead, something remarkable happened. In the crucible of exile, a new identity was forged. It was in the heart of the Babylonian Empire by the rivers of Babylon that the Judahites began to transform into Jews. Without a land, a temple, or a king to define them, their identity had to be rebuilt on a new foundation. The center of their community life shifted from rituals of sacrifice in a central temple to the study of shared texts and the observance of common practices. The stories, laws, and prophecies that had been preserved by their scribes and prophets, the earliest versions of what would become the Torah, became their portable homeland. Practices like the observance of the Sabbath, adherence to dietary laws, and the rite of circumcision became powerful markers of identity that distinguished them from their Babylonian neighbors. Their identity was no longer solely defined by geography, but by a shared memory, a shared set of sacred texts, and a shared commitment to a way of life. The term Yehudi, which once meant simply a person from the kingdom of Judah, now began to take on this new, deeper meaning, a member of this covenant community in exile, defined by faith and practice. This was the birth of what we now call Judaism. The exile in Babylon lasted for about 70 years, a period etched into the collective consciousness of the people. Then the political landscape shifted once again. The Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great, conquered Babylon. In a stunning reversal of previous imperial policy, Cyrus issued an edict in 538 BCE that allowed the exiled peoples, including the Judeans, to return to their homelands and rebuild their temples. This act is celebrated in the Bible as a moment of divine deliverance. Ezra and Nehemiah made the arduous journey back to their ancestral land, now a province of the Persian Empire known as Yehud. They faced immense challenges. The land was desolate, the city of Jerusalem was in ruins, and they faced hostility from the people who had remained. Their primary task was the monumental undertaking of rebuilding the temple. The completion of this second temple marked the identity of the Jew was now solidified, centered on the authority of the Torah, as promulgated by the scribe Ezra, and the renewed ritual life of the temple. This Second Temple Judaism would define the people for the next 5 centuries, navigating the currents of Persian, Hellenistic, and ultimately Roman rule. The clash with Hellenistic Greek culture following Alexander the Great's conquests presented a profound challenge to this newly solidified Jewish identity. Some Jews were drawn to the sophisticated philosophy, art, and lifestyle of the Greeks, leading to a process of Hellenization. Others saw it as a grave threat to their traditions and their covenant with God. This tension culminated in the Maccabean revolt in the 2nd century BCE, a successful uprising against the Seleucid Greek king Antiochus Epiphanes, who had attempted to outlaw Jewish practices and desecrate the temple. The victory, commemorated by the holiday of Hanukkah, resulted in a brief period of Jewish independence under the Hasmonean dynasty. This era also saw the flourishing of different Jewish sects, each with its own interpretation of the Torah and vision for society. The Sadducees were the priestly and aristocratic elite, closely tied to the temple rituals. The Pharisees were a more populist movement focused on the interpretation of both the written Torah and an evolving oral law, which they believed was necessary to apply the Torah's principles to everyday life. The Essenes were an ascetic community who retreated into the desert to live a life of purity, awaiting a final divine judgment. This internal diversity shows that Judaism was not a monolith, but a vibrant and evolving conversation. It was this complex and dynamic world that would soon come under the iron fist of the Roman Empire, setting the stage for yet another cataclysmic event, the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, an event that would once again reshape Jewish identity and scatter the Jewish people across the globe. The fall of the Second Temple to the Roman legions was an event of unimaginable trauma. It was a shattering echo of the first exile, but this time, the consequences would be even more profound and long-lasting. With the central institution of their religious life gone, the sacrificial system ceased. The priestly class, the Sadducees, lost their power base and faded into history. It was the Pharisaic model of Judaism, with its emphasis on scripture, oral law, prayer, and community leadership through rabbis or teachers, that the synagogue, most already an established institution for prayer and study, now replaced the temple as the heart of Jewish life. Rabbinic Judaism, which codified the oral traditions into vast compilations of law, ethics, and lore known as the Mishnah and the Talmud, became the mainstream expression of the Jewish faith. This portable, text-based version of Judaism was perfectly suited for a people who were now increasingly scattered. This long period of dispersion, known as the diaspora, would last for nearly 2 millennia. During these centuries, Jews established communities across the Middle East, North Africa, Europe, and eventually the Americas. They lived as minorities within larger Christian or Islamic societies, sometimes thriving and contributing richly to the cultures around them, at other times facing intense persecution, expulsions, and violence. Throughout this long exile, their identity as Jews was maintained through a shared religion, a common set of texts, a collective historical memory, and a persistent, deeply ingrained yearning for a return to Zion, their ancestral homeland. The name Israel was kept alive not as a political reality, but as a spiritual concept. They were Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, a spiritual nation in exile praying daily for a return to Jerusalem. For 19 centuries, the idea of returning to the land of Israel was largely a messianic dream, a core component of religious faith to be realized in a divinely ordained future. But in the late 19th century, this ancient hope was transformed into a modern political movement. The rise of nationalism across Europe, combined with a surge of vicious anti-Semitism, particularly in the Russian Empire, led many Jews to conclude that the only long-term solution to persecution was the re-establishment of a sovereign Jewish homeland. This new ideology was called Zionism. Led by secular visionaries like Theodor Herzl, an Austro-Hungarian journalist who was horrified by the Dreyfus Affair in France, Zionism framed the Jewish question in political rather than purely religious terms. Herzl argued that Jews were a nation and, like all other nations, deserved their own state where they could live in freedom and security. While it drew its inspiration from the ancient religious connection to the land, political Zionism was a modern nationalist movement, utilizing diplomacy, organization, and settlement to achieve its goals. It was a revolutionary idea that was met with both fervent support and fierce opposition, including from some religious Jews who believed that a return to the land should only happen with the coming of the Messiah. The dream of Zionism began to inch closer to reality in the tumultuous first half of the 20th century. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, in which the British government expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, was a pivotal moment. Following World War I, the League of Nations granted Britain a mandate to govern the territory, creating a framework for increased Jewish immigration and institution building. This period was marked by growing tensions and conflict between the Jewish and Arab communities in the region. The horrors of the Holocaust during World War II, in which 6 million Jews were systematically murdered by Nazi Germany and its collaborators, created an unprecedented sense of urgency and galvanized international support for the Zionist cause. The Jewish people, it seemed clear to many, needed a state of their own to ensure their very survival. In 1947, the United Nations voted to partition the British Mandate of Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. On May 14, 1948, as the British Mandate expired, David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel. The choice of the name Israel was a deeply symbolic and powerful act of historical reclamation. After 2,000 years, a sovereign state bearing the ancient name of the people was reborn in their ancestral land. The creation of the State of Israel gave rise to a third new identity, the Israeli. This term is distinct from both Israelite and Jew because it is a modern civic identity. An Israeli is simply a citizen of the State of Israel. This identity is defined by nationality, not by religion or ethnicity. This is one of the most crucial and often misunderstood distinctions. While the State of Israel was founded as a Jewish state and the majority of its citizens are Jewish, a significant portion of its population is not. About 20% of Israeli citizens are Arabs, Muslims, Christians, and Druze, who hold Israeli passports, vote in Israeli elections, and serve in its parliament. They are as Israeli as their Jewish neighbors. Conversely, and just as importantly, not all Jews are Israelis. In fact, the majority of the world's Jewish population lives outside of Israel, in countries like the United States, France, Canada, and Argentina. These individuals are part of the Jewish people, sharing a common heritage and faith, but their nationality is American, French, or Canadian, not Israeli. The Israeli identity is therefore about shared citizenship, a shared modern culture that has evolved over the past 7 decades, a shared language in modern Hebrew, and a shared experience of living in a complex and often turbulent region. It is a new chapter in the long story of this people, an identity tied to a specific sovereign piece of land. To fully grasp the distinctions we have covered, Let's break them down into their essential components, highlighting the core of each identity. The Israelite. This is the foundational identity, the ancestor of the others. The term Israelite refers specifically to a member of the ancient confederation of the 12 tribes of Jacob, or Israel. This identity was primarily national, tribal, and geographic, flourishing during the period of the Judges and the United and Divided Monarchies, from roughly 1200 BCE to 722 BCE. Its focus was the covenant between the children of Israel and their God, YHWH, centered on the promise of the land of Israel and, later, the rituals of the First Temple. After the Assyrian conquest and the exile of the northern tribes, the term Israelite largely ceased to be a contemporary political or ethnic descriptor, becoming instead a historical and theological term referring to the biblical ancestors of the Jewish people. Today, while central to Jewish and Christian theology, it is not a term used to describe a modern national or religious identity, with a few specific exceptions like the Samaritan community, who claim direct descent from the ancient northern Israelites. Number 2. The Jew. This is an ethno-religious identity that emerged directly from the ancient Israelites of the southern kingdom of Judah. Forged in the crucible of the Babylonian exile around the 6th century BCE, the Jewish identity transformed from one based on land and statehood to one centered on shared sacred texts, the Torah, a body of law and tradition, Judaism, and a collective memory and destiny. To be a Jew is to be a member of this historic people, a civilization that encompasses a shared ancestry, culture, language, and a religious framework that has evolved for over 2.5 millennia, not tied to a specific modern nationality. A person can be a French Jew, an Argentinian Jew, or an American Jew. It represents the continuation of the Israelite covenant through centuries of diaspora, a testament to the power of faith and memory to sustain a people in the absence of a sovereign homeland. Number 3. The Israeli. This is the most recent and most straightforward identity. An Israeli is a citizen of the modern State of Israel, which was established in 1948. This is a civic and national identity, much like being French or Japanese. The key distinction is that it is not defined by religion or ethnicity. While the State of Israel has a Jewish majority and its public character is shaped by Jewish culture and the Hebrew calendar, its citizenship is granted to people of all faiths and backgrounds. Therefore, an Israeli can be a Jew. This identity is tied to the political and geographical reality of the contemporary state, defined by its laws, its government, its language, and its modern culture. It signifies membership in a sovereign nation-state, the realization of the Zionist movement's goal to re-establish a national home for the Jewish people, which now includes a diverse citizenry of many faiths. So, while these three terms spring from the same historical root, they are not the same. They represent a remarkable evolution. The Israelite is the ancient ancestor from a specific tribal kingdom. The Jew is the heir to that legacy, a member of an ethno-religious group whose identity was forged in exile and sustained globally for millennia. And the Israeli is a citizen of the modern nation-state that was reborn in the ancient homeland. The story of these three words is the story of a people's incredible journey through time, a story of faith, exile, and return, written and rewritten across the very pages of human history. It's a powerful reminder that identity is never static. It is a living, breathing thing that adapts and transforms in response to the great currents of history. What part of this intricate history did you find the most surprising or enlightening? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. We read every one of them. And if you found this exploration valuable, please show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that have profoundly shaped our world.